Equality, Diversity and Inclusion in Digital Learning. Where we have a shared past, we do not have a shared memory. 15 minutes with Karen Logan from National Museums Northern Ireland on Contested Histories. Who are you and where do you work?
So I'm Karen Logan and I'm a Senior Curator of History with National Museums NI. So I would manage a team of curators that cover history, archaeology and world cultures at the Ulster Museum and also the transport and industry collections at the Ulster Transport Museum in Cultraw. But my own specialism and interest would be around contemporary history, and I was lead curator on the development of the Troubles and Beyond exhibition.
How do you integrate contested histories in your work at the Ulster Museum?
Well, interpreting difficult and contested histories has been a priority for us at National Museums NI for more than a decade now. And our evolving approach, it's included a number of different initiatives actually, in relation to the Decade of Centenaries, for example, and to collecting the Troubles and Beyond, and more recently inclusive global histories and our approach to decolonization. But I thought today I would just focus on the Troubles and Beyond initiative as an example. So our approach to interpreting the Troubles developed over time, and actually it was colleagues of mine in the art department that led the way with the Art of the Troubles exhibition back 2014, and then Silent Testimony exhibition in 2015. And to say there was a Troubles gallery in place within history, which opened before that in 2009, but it was just black and white photographs and text. Very much the way you would have seen the Troubles presented in the media, sort of through the lens of a photojournalist. And it was clear to us that the impact of the gallery was really limited by that lack of original objects and different perspectives. So with the support of National Gallery Heritage Fund, we began the Collecting the Troubles and Beyond project. And well, the aim of that project was to widen the scope of the collection, supported by greater academic and community engagement in order to enhance our interpretation of our recent past. And just to say a bit more about the project, it had three main strands. So developing the collection obviously was at the heart of it to ensure we could use it to represent such a complex period of our history. But other strands were public engagement and events, and that was just about encouraging dialogue, such an important part of the process, and exhibitions. So not just the Troubles and Beyond exhibition, but other related temporary and touring exhibitions that went alongside it as well. So it was really designed as a platform for engagement and to evolve in line with that, be able to respond to it. So rather than us ever presenting like a finished product, we viewed it as a process and still do. The gallery's been in place now 5 years and we still see that as very much an ongoing process. So we try to create a gallery that's really dynamic and offers opportunities for people to respond and contribute to their own stories, and that's still happening to this day.
How did this project challenge your ways of working?
And that is a real challenge in terms of how we present those, and I think really the representation of contested history, within this context of a divided society still within Northern Ireland, presents really significant challenges, but also opportunities. So I guess we began by assessing the existing collection and trying to identify gaps and seeking to address those, just as I was saying, about making sure the collection could be used to represent those different perspectives. There also were challenges around kind of ethical representation, because it's a conflict which claimed thousands of lives. So we would have worked closely with victims and survivor groups, like, for example, Wave Trauma Centre, and we developed a sort of set of key principles that would underpin the whole project and our work in this area, and that was in consultation with our academic advisors on the project. As I said, we viewed this as a process and one that had to be open and transparent. That was important as well, that we kind of acknowledged the limitations of what had been done to date, and we took guidance from others as we were trying to develop new approaches. So we developed that model around kind of encouraging dialogue, representing those multiple perspectives and bringing them together and curating them responsibly in context, taking quite a critical approach, encouraging our audience to be quite critical in their understanding and challenging their thinking around some of what we were presenting, and just ultimately trying to build understanding and help people to be more open to other points of view. I think we tend to find if people find themselves represented, then they're more open to understanding a bit more about other perspectives as well. And we tried to really actively listen to people and respond to their feedback and try and find the right pace in terms of how we developed the project and how we worked with people, and not trying to force that or rush that. It took time. There was years of development behind this. And in terms of other challenges, the development of the collection has left us with this backlog almost of material that we've brought in and a lot of work to do in process and that. So we've had to find ways to manage that as well in terms of such an accelerated sort of period of collection development and the impact of that in our stores and in our processes for cataloging the collection. So it's been managing that as well, but it's great to have that, and we now have so much in place, that we can make available to others as well and use in different contexts. So yeah, there were some sort of challenges in the approach to it, but some benefits as well.
What did you have to keep in mind about the language used for the interpretation?
I mean, that's so important in language, it's really key. And it did come up in the conversations that we were having and the discussions with our academic advisors and other stakeholders and partners. It's the difference between whether you say somebody was killed or murdered, whether you describe it as conflict, terrorism. And some people would even disagree with the use of the term troubles. And, we've accepted, we will use that term. It's part of the title of the exhibition, but there are some who would challenge that. So yeah, it was really important to have those conversations. And again, just being really open and honest in that and sort of deciding on our approach and kind of adhering to that and standing over that. So for me, I suppose the main thing to keep in mind was just the consistency around that in terms of how you're describing those types of events, that's consistently applied throughout the gallery in terms of the language and tone. And it's just having that kind of editorial integrity, I would say, and how you approach what we know is contested history. As you say, there are some who have a completely different point of view on how something should be described. But yeah, the academic community partners would have reviewed the text and we would have those kind of conversations with them. So in that sense, it's the work of more than one person. It's not just myself writing that text and putting it up in the gallery. That's been through a number of hands and lots of different sets of eyes on it. So, it's really important that we can present pluralism without bias. And the another feature that we used was the personal testimonies. So that's a set of 12 accounts that people have written in their own words, and that was another way of getting different voices into the space. And it was a matter of working with them in terms of the language they were using as well, and there were some parameters within that, but it is written in the person's own words and agreed with them. So yeah, it was kind of setting that overall tone and just I'd say consistency was the main point.
How did you avoid being seen as biased?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's taken time really to develop relationships and challenge those perceptions that might be around the Ulster Museum or National Museums NI. And we found that people did come to see the kind of the genuine commitment that we had to inclusion and that openness around the process and what we were doing, around the opportunities we were providing for people to feedback. That all kind of helped with that in terms of just having that open door and hearing the comments and being able to respond. For us, really, it was about just encouraging that kind of dialogue and those conversations, being really honest, transparent, responding to feedback. So if people felt there was a gap or something had been misrepresented or it was inaccurate in some way, we could look at it again with them and respond accordingly. And there were, a couple of examples of that, of something that had to be corrected in one of the captions soon after we opened, and people maybe coming forward feeling something hadn't been fully addressed or represented, maybe suggesting gaps that we've been able to respond to. And that's part of the process as the gallery develops. And I think really we've made progress with that. And just from my own kind of firsthand accounts and conversations, I feel that people's perceptions of us have changed, that we're seen as being a bit braver and more inclusive, more open, more approachable. And we're seeing the benefits of that and the kind of outcome in terms of people coming forward. In the conversations we're having, it's sort of apparent that they maybe wouldn't have come forward previously, but now they are and maybe viewing us a bit differently, which is great. And we would have joined as well some other networks. So things like the International Coalition of Sites of Conscience, and there's another network that we're part of establishing, the Conflict and Legacy Interpretive Network. So those kind of partnerships, also opportunities for us to collaborate with others and kind of facilitate, receive loans, work together to interpret this period of our history. So we would see it very much as a distributed story. Like, we don't own this, and it's not just ourselves working on it. So we work quite closely with others. I think an important part of it is building those relationships and networks and how we're seeing perceptions of us across those.
How did you make sure audience feedback could be included?
That's the part of the design, was to enable us to be able to do that. So things were done quite inexpensively, or things were done in a way that could be switched out or changed. So there'd be like large frame, nothing too bespoke, nothing too heavily invested in for just a specific display that couldn't then be changed or couldn't easily be changed without real sort of cost impact. So it was designed to help us to do that we can quite easily switch things out, update labels, change the displays and be able to respond to that. And in that sense, everyone's kind of a stakeholder in it and everybody has their say. And in terms of the feedback, we collect feedback forms, but we also put the comments up on screen so you can see what others have said and be able to respond to that. And positive or negative, if somebody maybe has a challenge or an issue with the gallery, that goes up there and it's part of that conversation. So it's, again, just been really open in that and giving people that mechanism to come back and feed back into it and feel that they have a stake. And as you say, then see that kind of manifest, those changes taking place in the gallery in response to their comments. So it's it was designed that we could do that quite quickly and people would be able to see that they were having an impact in that way.
How would you like to take your approach into the digital sphere?
Really, I think just by offering that kind of similar platform for engagement, a lot of the same kind of principles and approaches, if we could translate that across into the digital. Um, yeah, I think just continuing to represent those multiple perspectives and hopefully still challenging people's thinking around that. But it'd be great to use the opportunities we have within digital to build in additional content, so more oral histories, videos, for example, that we could use and to showcase those collections that we now hold. I mentioned that the collection development has continued and we now have vast collections that we can't actually, the gallery can't accommodate. And to be honest, at the moment, the Troubles and Beyond exhibition is kind of limited by the physical space. So to use that kind of digital approach to maybe build in some more content around that and just again to show that it's an ongoing process and show the latest activity, whether that might be other events or exhibition updates, those kind of changes that we make in additions. I'm actually about to make some more in the next month or two, or the collection development, we're still acquiring new material, or research projects. We have a number of master's PhD students over the years that have done research, so it would be good to kind of show all the activity that goes on around the exhibition, because to us, Troubles and Beyond, it's a wider initiative than just that one gallery. So I think we could use the digital platform almost to kind of showcase that and make some of that more accessible to the public, because they may not be aware of some of the things that are going on behind the scenes. If I'm facilitating research within our stores, for example, or if there's different activity or related exhibitions, just to kind of connect those and kind of signpost people to what else is happening would be great. So yeah, as you say, we're sort of at an early stage with the new website, but I think over time we'll be able to build more of that content in, that it becomes almost a hub for that whole wider initiative. It's bigger than the gallery itself in that sense.
What would be your top tip for somebody else about to start a project involving contested histories?
Okay, number one, in terms of top tips, I would say consult others. You absolutely can't do this in isolation. You need to engage with all those relevant stakeholders and what we've sort of come to term critical friends that we had throughout the process that had kind of experience in working in contested histories and were kind of beside us and commenting and providing feedback as we went through the process. So definitely engaging with others. I would also say take your time. As I said, our exhibition was developed over a period of years. It's now been in place for 5 years. We're still refining it. So yeah, take your time and the lead into it and give that space for those networks and relationships to build and develop. And it does take time, and that needs to be invested. But also say about maybe just being clear in your intentions and acknowledging what's within and what's outside the bounds of your project or what you're trying to achieve. And that's something that came through from us from the evaluation that we did on our work on the Troubles, to just be really kind of clear and intentional in what we're trying to do from the outset. And yeah, setting those kind of almost boundaries of what is included and what's beyond the scope, and just being conscious of that, and knowing the role that you play and understanding what you can bring to it.
Join DLNET and Karen on Twitter for more insights and opportunities for discussion on April the 14th, 2023, between 1 and 2 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Follow at DLNET or the hashtag DLNETchat to participate.